What's going on between Trump and Vladimir Putin? Many Democrat leaders are convinced that Vladimir Putin has something on Trump which makes Trump dance to his tunes. Now that sounds outlandish and quite difficult to believe, but in the manner in which Trump turned turtle on Ukraine, completely changing America's position from being the strongest supporter to voting against Ukraine in the United Nations, how do you reconcile what Trump has been doing with Vladimir Putin, whom he's treating like a dear friend and potential ally?
Well, Trump wants to end the war. And you'll remember that at the end of Trump's first term with Afghanistan, he wanted to end the war. He did a deal with the Taliban where he made a lot of concessions to them, an enemy of the U.S. that no other American president would have made. And he made those concessions over the heads of American allies in Europe, in Eurasia, and in the Middle East that had been fighting side by side with the Americans for 20 years in Afghanistan. Trump didn't care, wasn't interested in coordinating. Now, of course, the stakes are a lot higher with Russia and with Europe and with Ukraine than they were in the war in Afghanistan. But I think you will find that Trump's general orientation towards that negotiation was actually very analogous. So that it shouldn't surprise us. Also, Trump understands that individual European leaders don't like him, don't respect him, laugh about him behind his back. He really can't stand that. He remembers when he met with Putin, in his first term, Putin was someone that was willing to treat him, with greater respect. And maybe that shouldn't matter as an American president who's most importantly supposed to be representing the long-term national interests of the American people. But Trump, who has an enormous ego, and really holds a grudge if you treat him badly. Think about how he responded to Obama at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and he's never forgotten that. I think that matters. So I think if you put those things together, you get a reasonable explanation. It's impossible to imagine that Putin has anything on Trump, because if he had something on Trump, why didn't they use it in the first term when Trump actually had a harder line on Russia than Obama? I mean, Trump was the one that provided the Javelin anti-tank missiles. Obama thought it was too risky. Trump was the one that increased sanctions on Russian oligarchs that were close to Putin. So I think it's completely conspiracy theory that has no evidence to it, actually contradicts evidence to argue that Trump somehow is indebted to Putin or is being extorted by Putin. I think that's silly. And also Trump's position on Ukraine has evolved pretty substantially in the last 96 hours.
How does that even happen?
Zelensky
he calls him a dictator, then wants to do
Trump.
a deal. How is that war between Russia and Ukraine likely to end? And what would Mr. Zelensky be thinking of Trump at the moment? Because he seems to, at one step, call him a hopeless dictator who's lost all popularity, and the other side is willing to cut a deal. Where does that war potentially end, and in what fashion?
That's right. And he backed off of the dictator comment just yesterday. So, again, I think anyone that's telling you they know where the war is going to end is clearly smoking something, because they haven't been watching how willing Trump is to change his position on the basis of how he thinks these individual leaders are treating him. I think that Trump is potentially interested in seeing how much the Europeans are capable of doing. That if they stand up a large number of troops on the ground in Ukraine in the aftermath of a ceasefire, Trump would be willing to push the Russians harder to accept those troops. And maybe the U.S. would offer a security backstop. And he would do it because Trump could then say legitimately that I got the Europeans to take a leadership role when Biden was never able to. But if the Europeans are incapable of doing that, then he's much more likely to sign a harder bargain for Zelensky over his head directly with Putin that'll include a much broader set of agreements: diplomatic re-engagement, economic re-engagement, reduction of sanctions, restarting arms control talks with the Russians. And again, I mean, this is all very much in play right now. No one should argue they know where this war is going to go. I think it's very likely we'll get a ceasefire, but on what terms, and will the Europeans be satisfied with it? And can the Ukrainians go along and maintain their present governance model? All of those things are very uncertain presently.
Before we end, how coherent is Trump 2.0 looking from your lens? Is there cohesion between Elon Musk and Donald Trump? He's been invited to important cabinet meetings. Is that the way it's likely to stay, or are you counting down to a blow-up?
Elon Musk is by far the most powerful person in the United States after Trump. He activates Trump. Trump said last week, I want you even more aggressive. I want you doing more. Trump has always been very good at managing relationships with people that are wealthier than he is, more powerful than he is. And Elon is that by a factor of 10, maybe more. And so the fact that Trump, 78 years old, he was shot in the head, almost assassinated a few months ago. He tells his friends, I don't have much time. And not even 4 years, might have only 2 years if the Democrats take the House during midterms, which is certainly plausible. And, again, his health, we don't know where that will be as a 78-year-old man. We know that there are other people out there that are certainly, want to do harm to Trump. So he wants to move as fast as possible. And Elon is the guy that singularly allows Trump to accomplish that. This relationship is incredibly strong. In my view, it's only getting stronger.
No, but we're seeing from some American government departments a pushback against Elon Musk's emails. The Department of Defense, Department of State writing back saying don't respond to what Elon Musk is doing. So will that pushback gain momentum, or will Musk push back against this pushback and just push his way through?
Oh, as you saw, Elon was giving a speech at cabinet and Trump was completely supporting him. Most of the cabinet officials went along with him. The couple that did not were not getting into public fights with him. They were just saying, these are places where clearances and classification is important. They wanted to ensure that you didn't have employees that were responding to Elon and suddenly taking classified material and making it exposed not only to somebody that doesn't necessarily have the right to use those clearances in other ways, and also potentially exposing that information to being collected by adversaries like Russia and China. You will continue to see internal pushback because Elon is powerful, he has access, he's moving fast and breaking things, which works in Silicon Valley, does not work in the U.S. government. But Trump is completely aligned with it. So the pushback you are talking about, not 1% of that is coming from Trump himself, and he is the only voice that matters here.
Some of your answers have felt like I was watching an episode of Saturday Night Live, but this is very, very serious and far from being any laughing matter. Hang tight.
Absolutely.
Does it feel surreal? Does it feel like you're living in some ways in a fiction novel which is playing itself out? A geopolitical
No.
fiction
Truth
novel?
has always been stranger than fiction, my friend. The fact is this is deadly serious for Americans and for people all over the world. And I consider it an obligation to do everything I can to be on top of this as it's changing in world-changing ways every day and trying to make sure that people have the best understanding of that they possibly can.
We in India are only watching from the sidelines. You, Ian, are right in the middle of what's happening, the law of the jungle taking over. Hang tight, stay strong. For joining us, thank you very much.
Good to see you, Ro.